If you're driving on a completely normal road in the middle of the day, and 5 people witness the same accident, but each one swears they saw something completely different, something impossible. What would you believe? Would you trust your own eyes? Or would you start wondering if reality itself can crack for a moment and show something it shouldn't? Because what happened on that highway is something none of us has been able to agree on since, and the worst part is that every version of the story is terrifying in its own way. Before I tell you what happened, make sure you hit like and subscribe to Unblinking, because this channel is where we share the kind of stories people usually keep to themselves. Stories that sound impossible, but come from people who swear they experienced them. And if you stay with me until the end, you might understand why 5 witnesses can look at the same moment and remember 5 different horrors. I've never told this story publicly before, and even now I'm not completely sure how much of it was real. Maybe exhaustion can do strange things to the mind, or maybe that road carries something we simply don't understand. All I know is that I was there, and the memory of that afternoon hasn't faded even after all these years. Back then, I worked as a roadside maintenance technician for a long stretch of desert highway in Nevada. My job was simple most days. Just checking damaged guardrails, clearing debris, and helping tow trucks when accidents happened in remote areas. The highway ran straight 4 miles through pale salt flats and dry wind. The kind of place where the horizon feels too wide and the sky seems strangely heavy. The accident happened at around 3:40 in the afternoon. The sun was still high, bright enough that the asphalt shimmered like water in the distance. I remember the heat pressing down on everything, and the sound of wind sliding across the empty road. There were 5 of us who witnessed the crash. Me, a long-haul truck driver named Carlos, a college student named Hannah, an older tourist couple in an RV, and a highway patrol officer who had stopped nearby for a routine check. 5 people. 5 clear views of the same moment. At least. That's what we thought. The vehicle that crashed was a silver sedan. It came down the highway fast. Faster than most cars on that stretch. I noticed it because the reflection of sunlight from the windshield flashed across my eyes while I was tightening bolts on a damaged barrier. Then the sedan suddenly swerved. It didn't look like a driver falling asleep or losing control. It looked like someone reacting to something directly in front of the car. The sedan jerked left, then right, and then it slammed straight into the guardrail about 50 yards from where I stood. Metal screamed, glass exploded outward, and the car spun halfway around before stopping in a cloud of dust. For a moment, everything went quiet. Not normal quiet, the strange kind where even the wind seems to pause. I dropped my wrench and ran toward the wreck. Carlos jumped down from his truck and sprinted from the opposite direction. The patrol officer was already moving fast toward the car while calling something into his radio. The sedan's front was crushed hard into the barrier. Steam hissed from the engine, and broken glass glittered across the road. But the driver's door was open, and the driver was gone. At first, we assumed the person had been thrown from the car. That happens sometimes in violent crashes, especially when seatbelts aren't used. We searched the ground around the wreck. There was no body. No blood. No sign that anyone had even been inside. The patrol officer checked the interior carefully. The seat was pushed forward like someone had been driving, but the seatbelt was untouched. It felt strange. But accidents can be strange. Then the argument started. Carlos was the first to say something that didn't match what I saw. He kept shaking his head and repeating the same sentence over and over. "That thing ran across the road," he said. I asked what he meant. He looked at me like I was the crazy one. "The tall man," he said. He pointed toward the empty stretch of highway where the sedan had swerved. Carlos said he saw a very tall figure step into the road just seconds before the crash. Not walking, not running, just standing there in the middle of the lane as the sedan approached. He said the driver tried to avoid hitting it, but when the car crashed and the dust cleared, the figure was gone. I told him there had been no one in the road. I had been looking right at the highway when the sedan swerved, but Hannah suddenly spoke up. And what she said was even stranger. She said the car didn't swerve to avoid someone. She said it swerved because the driver tried to avoid hitting another car. Hannah insisted that for a split second, she saw a dark SUV directly in front of the sedan. She said it appeared out of nowhere, blocking the lane. Then the SUV vanished right before the crash. Carlos laughed nervously and said that made no sense, but Hannah was serious. She said she clearly saw the SUV reflection in the sedan's windshield. Then the tourist couple walked over. They had been sitting inside their RV parked near a rest marker, and they had also witnessed the crash through their front window. The husband spoke first, and what he said didn't match either story. He said there was no person and no SUV. He said he saw something crawling across the road, something low to the ground, something fast. The wife interrupted him and said it wasn't crawling. She said it slid across the asphalt like a shadow that had somehow detached from something. The patrol officer told everyone to calm down and focus on the facts. He said accidents can create confusion, and people often misinterpret what they see in stressful moments. Then he told us what he saw, and that's when the situation stopped feeling normal. Because the officer said the sedan never swerved at all. According to him, the car drove perfectly straight until the moment it slammed into the guardrail. He said there had been nothing in the road. Nothing crossing. Nothing blocking the lane. The car simply crashed. 5 witnesses. 5 completely different versions. And none of them matched. At first, we assumed someone was just mistaken. Maybe glare from the sun caused reflections. Maybe heat waves distorted shapes on the highway. But then we started noticing something else. Every version included one detail that none of us could explain. Carlos said the tall figure in the road had no face. He said it looked like a man's body, but the head was just smooth skin where features should have been. Hannah said the SUV she saw had no driver. Video, she said the windshield was dark, but when sunlight hit it, she could see the empty front seats. The tourist's husband said the crawling thing moved too smoothly for an animal. He said it looked like a human shape but bent the wrong way while crossing the road. The wife said the sliding shadow moved against the direction of the sunlight, and the patrol officer hesitated before saying his detail. He said when the sedan crashed, he briefly saw someone inside the driver's seat, but that person disappeared before the car stopped moving. We all stared at each other. Nobody wanted to say what we were thinking, because none of those details could exist at the same time. The tow truck arrived 20 minutes later. The wreck was loaded and taken away. The highway reopened, but the arguments continued. For the next hour, we kept replaying the moment in our heads. Every one of us was certain about what we saw, and every story contradicted the others. Eventually, the patrol officer collected our statements. He told us the investigation would review nearby traffic cameras. That seemed like the easiest way to settle the confusion, except there were no cameras on that stretch of highway. Just miles of empty road. I thought that would be the end of it. But something else happened that made the whole thing worse. When the officer finished writing the report, he asked us one final question. What time did the accident happen? We all gave almost identical answers. Around 3:40 p.m., but according to the officer's dashboard camera, the crash occurred at 3:12 p.m. 28 minutes earlier. None of us believed that at first. The sun position looked exactly the same. The heat felt the same, but the digital timestamp was clear. We had somehow experienced the accident later than when it actually happened. Or maybe the camera was wrong. We tried to explain it away. Maybe the patrol car clock hadn't been updated. Maybe the dash cam had a glitch, but the officer checked his phone. Then the radio time signal. Every device showed the same thing. The crash happened earlier than we remembered, and none of us had noticed. The silence that followed felt heavy. Carlos joked that maybe we all had heat stroke. Hannah laughed nervously, but no one really believed that explanation, because the memory of the moment felt too clear, too detailed, too vivid. Later that evening, I went back to the maintenance station. I tried to forget the entire incident, but something about it kept pulling at my thoughts. Not the crash, not the missing driver. The reflections, every witness had described something appearing in front of the car, something that made the driver react, something that shouldn't have been there. A few days later, I heard something else about the accident. The sedan had been traced to a man named Eric Dalton, a sales representative who had been driving across the state for work. But according to phone records, Eric Dalton made a call to his office at 3:35 p.m., 23 minutes after the crash supposedly happened. That didn't make sense. The car had already been destroyed by then. The police tried to explain it. Maybe the phone call connected automatically. Maybe there was an error in the system. But the voice on the recording was clear. It was Eric Dalton, and he sounded confused. The call lasted only 11 seconds. He said one sentence before the line disconnected. I think something stepped into the road. After that, the signal went dead. No one has seen Eric Dalton since. His body was never found. The car had no blood, no fingerprints besides old ones, and no sign of forced entry. It was like the driver had simply stopped existing the moment the crash happened. Over time, the witnesses stopped talking about it. Carlos went back to driving. Hannah graduated and moved away. The tourist couple returned to Canada. The patrol officer transferred districts. Life continued, but I still drive past that guardrail sometimes. The barrier has been replaced twice since the crash. Yet every time I pass that spot, something feels slightly wrong. The sunlight always reflects strangely off the road there, almost like shapes moving across the asphalt. Maybe it's just the heat waves. Maybe it's reflections from passing cars. Or maybe our minds filled in details that never existed. But sometimes I wonder about the 5 different things we saw. A faceless figure. The empty SUV. The crawling shape. The sliding shadow. The disappearing driver. 5 different horrors, all at the exact same second. Maybe our brains try to make sense of something they couldn't understand. Something that shouldn't have been there. Maybe stress played tricks on my mind. Or maybe some places scary things we simply don't understand. But one thing I believe with certainty is this. Everything happens by the will of Allah. Nothing moves, nothing changes, and nothing touches our lives without His knowledge. Everything happens according to Allah's will. And maybe some questions are not meant to be answered. If you've ever experienced something strange on an empty road, something you still can't explain, share it in the comments because I read every single one. And if this story made you question what people really see in moments like this, send it to someone who loves unsettling mysteries. And if you want more true feeling stories that stay with you long after the video ends, subscribe to Unblinking, because sometimes the scariest things aren't monsters. They're the moments when reality stops agreeing with itself.